Hello and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 265 co-main event between Jose Aldo and Pedro Munhoz. I knew I would get a lot of requests for this one, so I've read your mind and I am going to do it right now for you. Okay. Obviously Aldo, since moving down a weight class, it has struggled. He pulled a win back against Vera. It was a very close fought victory, but one thing that we know for sure about Aldo, regardless of the weight class, he's better over 3 rounds than 5. I think back to his earlier career when he was defending his belt at featherweight, and it was consistent. He would just take one of the 5 off. and you can watch back through his fights, and sometimes you can see he takes the 3rd round off. Sometimes he does 4 rounds of good work and then he takes the 5th off. I mean, that's what stuck in my mind after the Mark Hominick fight, because he'd already done so much damage to Hominick's head and he was already so ahead on the scorecards. And I always felt like, some fighters just do generally have a limitation of what their output can be over 25 minutes. And I think Aldo is one of those fighters. So I think regardless of whether he's at 145 or 135, I think his output over 3 rounds is always going to be much more interesting, much more entertaining, because he does have a better pace over 15 minutes. He doesn't have to reserve quite as much energy for the championship rounds. On the flip side, Pedro Munhoz, the way that he cracks this fight, the way that he brings it into his wheelhouse is by using fatigue. You look back at his fight against Jimmy Rivera, his more recent one. He threw 52 low kicks and landed 40 of them. And you can remember the bruising on Jimmy Rivera's leg from those calf kicks. He's also got a really good front kick to the body from his rear leg. Something else that would be valuable if he keeps jamming that into Aldo's midsection as well as chopping that to that lead leg, orthodox v orthodox as well. Obviously, it makes that trade a little bit easier. I think that it's a worthwhile investment, Munoz throwing to damage the legs and investing heavily in that in the early round, as well as those front kicks to the midsection. I don't expect Aldo to want to grapple a great deal in this fight. I think generally that's an unnecessary energy expense, and I think against Chito Vera, he kind of had the clinch imposed upon him in that 3rd round and was able to take Chito's back. And, was threatening enough through the round, from the back position. So if there's an opportunity maybe to find himself in an advantageous position, maybe say, for example, Pedro Munhoz has thrown a combination and he's landed with a low kick and Aldo counters the low kick with a punch and knocks him down, which, we've seen before. He's got great counter punching. I think both of these guys have got enough power to hurt each other and rock each other. I don't think either of them maybe can knock each other dead with one shot. But I think if Aldo knocks down Munhoz, he's quick enough and measured enough to capitalize on it. And I think if Pedro Munhoz lands a good shot on Aldo and hurts him enough to drop him, I think he's going to go straight onto the neck. I mean, Munhoz has got excellent guillotines. I think he'll struggle to catch Aldo with a guillotine unless he's rocked or he's really tired. But again, that circles back to the fatigue aspect of the fight. If I'm Pedro Munhoz coming into this one, I'm thinking, okay, I need to chop into his lead leg. I mean, you don't want to start a low kick battle with Aldo because he's one of the best at it. But what we do know from the stats is that his output for low kicks has dropped off significantly towards this point of his career. Like Aldo against Uriah Faber, I mean, his whole leg was like a purple sausage a week later. It was ridiculous. I remember seeing him come into the studio on crutches and not really comprehending that kind of damage could be done with low kicks until I saw it for myself. Aldo completely destroyed his leg. But that was a higher output. That was kind of before the emergence of calf kicks as well. So that does change things a little bit. But Aldo's a great low kicker, but his volume's not nearly what Pedro Munhoz is. Like I said, he landed 40 low kicks in his last fight. And that was a 3-rounder as well. So it's high volume. He also targeted the calf, and the benefit in that is that you only need a couple to really do damage. The downside is that it brings you a lot closer to your opponent to be there on the receiving end of counter punches, which Aldo's great at. He's a good counter puncher. He's got very fast hands. He's one of technically the better strikers that we've ever seen in mixed martial arts. I mean, that's undeniable. Pedro Munhoz is a very effective striker. He's not quite as clean as Aldo, and I don't think he's quite as fast. But I would say that if he lands, it's got more weight to it. There's definitely a heaviness to the way that Munhoz lands his shots. Partly, and the sacrifice being is that he plants his feet quite heavy. He's got quite a wide stance. So that makes his leg vulnerable to Aldo as well. But then again, his forward pressure might make Aldo uncomfortable enough to not use low kicks. I mean, I think if I'm Aldo coming into this one, I want to skirt around the outside because Munoz always likes to take the center. And if you're going to take the center off Munoz, you've either got to stand and fight him for it, or you've got to level change and take him down. And again, it's an unnecessary risk, I think, for Aldo to level change because we know that Munoz has got great guillotines, great neck attacks. Why take that risk when you can stay in the range which is comfortable and kickbox? And I think Aldo would look at Munoz and think, okay, I can see ways in and around his guard. It doesn't mean to say that he's going to be as effective because if Munoz is pushing forward, his intensity, his tenacity, his aggression will somewhat overwhelm some of that technical aspects. He'll land heavier, he'll commit more to his shots, he'll leave himself in the pocket to take a couple of shots. I mean, there were times in that recent Jimmy Rivera fight where he was throwing heavy to the leg and he was trading one low kick for 3 or 4 punches. I don't think that's a great thing to do against, a sharp puncher like Aldo. But I think, for the investment of the low kick, I think he might do it anyway. So that's an interesting trade. I think this is predominantly going to be a striking match, but with the pressure from Munoz, I also think there might be some level changes, and I think he also can't be discouraged if his opponent gets back to his feet. If I go back to the first Jimmy Rivera fight, there were times when he was able to take Rivera down quite clean and quite comfortably, but there was no point where he secured the position. And you could see, Jimmy Rivera scramble back to his feet and Munoz would keep marching forward, but there was kind of a discouraged posture to him. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But I think he has to realize that there's a benefit in pushing Aldo in any way he can. If it's low kicks, if it's front kicks to the midsection, if it's volume punching, he's got a good left hook to the body as well. Anything he can do that will sap the energy levels of Aldo at over 3 rounds, including, wrestling and failing takedowns and allowing him to scramble back to his feet, it all amounts to pressure. I think Aldo on the flip side, I think he's got great grappling, but I think he really doesn't want to use it, especially at this point in his career. And I think if he can stay at a comfortable range to him and just kind of pick Munoz apart, especially with, counter strikings, letting Munoz go first, jabbing and chopping that lead leg and, and making Munoz pay heavy for standing on the lead leg with most of his weight. I think Aldo is the more technical fighter. The big question is whether Munoz will allow him the breathing room, which I just don't think he will. Quick look at the stats. I mean, there's only an inch in height. Aldo's 5'7" compared to Munoz 5'6", but there's a 5-inch reach advantage for Aldo, which again, it plays into the stay at range, picking with your jab. Aldo's got a great jab. Munoz does as well, but Munoz is more like step and like drive it. I'm going to punch this glove down your throat. Whereas Aldo will snipe at you with a good stinging jab and then start using that as a feint to set up, other punches or kicks, other shots to follow. Of course, Munoz's, significant strike count is higher. Accuracy is pretty similar, both in the mid-40s, 45 for Aldo, 43 for Munoz. And striking defense slightly higher for Aldo as well, but that's where the volume of Munoz comes into play. And then, slightly higher takedown average for Munoz. Really, really good takedown defense for Aldo. I mean, we have seen him taken down in recent fights, but it's, fatigue is a big part of that takedown being successful. It's the persistence. It's the, I can defend for a minute on this one, and then the next time you can defend for 45, and then it's 30 seconds, and then it gets to the point where you step in heavy and you see them level change, and you just don't have the energy for it. And that's the point where Munoz needs to get him to, in order to be successful with his takedowns. I mean, takedown accuracy for Munoz is 21%, which is very low. But his submission average is good. And like I said, if he uses it as an offensive weapon to sap Aldo, then I think, he might start opening up some opportunities in the last round. I think this is a great fight. I hope Aldo comes in looking like himself, and not looking like. I mean, I'm always surprised at how young he is by comparison. They're both the same age. Both born in '86. In fact, there's 2 days between them, their birthdays. But Aldo's had 36 fights compared to Munoz has had 25. And they've been 5-rounders against the best fighters in the world at featherweight. He's definitely not the fighter that he was. It doesn't mean to say he's not dangerous, but I do think that the volume and the intensity that Munoz brings might be the breaking point in this fight. Might be too much for Aldo because Munoz brings the heat. But I'm always a big fan of Aldo, and I hope he has a great performance. Enjoy this fight, and I'll see you next time.